So yeah, this is the beginning of season 6. I know, isn't it crazy? Now look, in season is a little a little bit of a misnomer. We just collect, 20 to 25 episodes into kind of a collection and then release it as a season. So like our seasons are only about a half a year long, but still we're doing weekly and, try to keep them thematic. One of the reasons that we kind of release on the schedule we do is we swirl around a particular idea. And then once that runs its course, we take a pause and then we come back and go into another idea or set of ideas. So it's been fun.
Yeah. And so volume, our 6th volume, our 6th chapter, our 6th.
Ooh, chapter. Ooh, I like that. That's
chapter?
Actually really, yeah. We don't do seasons. We do chapters. We're writers, damn it.
That's right.
That's right.
Look at us figuring out our own marketing in
That's
real
right.
time.
3 years in. Yeah.
See, that's what's really funny to me is like, we've only been doing this for 3 years, but we have we're starting our 6th chapter. Fantastic. Yeah. So it's almost like, what did you do over your summer vacation, right?
There is a bit of that vibe. That is true. I have a whole therapy session we could do. I don't know if the folks out in the world are that intrigued with my therapy session, but I can share a little bit of the ups and downs that I've had. I'd love to hear what's going on with you, Tim, because I know you are continuing to publish, continuing to crush. And so I'm very excited about that.
Well, thank you very much. But yes, let's hear what you've got. Tell us, Art. Tell us.
So I finished that contract of the company I was working for. And I have a very strong suspicion that none of the work that I did will see the light of day. And that is super frustrating, but also completely understandable. It's one of those things where when you write for other people, it's theirs, so whatever I did, I don't own, I didn't even keep copies of it. Like it's not mine. And, it seems like they actually had moved on from the project right as my contract was about to expire. They kind of, said, hey, we're going to move in another direction. And I think they shelved the entire project and actually moved the art assets and the design assets onto a different project that was kind of quicker to get to market. And, it was basically a thanks. We'll let you know. And so I really don't think that anything that I did is actually going to show up, in a product. If it does, I'll let you know. I mean, it was a cool game idea and it was a really cool story. But ultimately, I don't think it really hit the mark for what they wanted. And they just went in a different direction. So that's a bummer. I mean, I made money, so that's good. But, you put time and effort into something, you kind of want to see it through creatively to fruition. So I feel a little interrupted, I guess is a good way to put it. Like it didn't quite get that to finish. So, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't really talked a lot about that in our 5 previous chapters about writing for someone else. We've always been sort of exploring our own selves with the various ways that we've done it, with flash fiction, microfiction, nonfiction, whatever we've done. But there is that idea, it's a different kind of rejection that really, really hurts. You're putting time into something and then it doesn't work out the way that you want. But I mean, it still got you writing, do you feel that you got some value out of it as far as being able to produce that kind of output?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, the value I got out of it was financial. I mean, I was paid for my time and I did work very hard to try to create something that was marketable. And so what I've discovered, it really leaning on my training manager and kind of management background, I see where the disconnect was. It really wasn't a creative issue at all. It was more of a time allocation and a resource management issue. So just the high level version. I was working really in a small creative pod of designers. And so we were all siloed and focused on the project. And most of them were designing the game. And I was trying to write the narrative that would support the decisions they were making in the game. And again, I don't really want to give away any of the information because I signed an NDA and I don't want to deal with any of that. So I'm going to kind of keep it very generic. But the game was set in a factory. And that was one of the reasons I think they brought me on. I have a lot of experience working in factories and training people how to stay safe and how to do their jobs well in factory settings. So I brought a lot of real world experience to it that I think they appreciated. But one of the design conceits of the game was that the machinery that you would operate in the game would randomly populate in different rooms, and that you had this sort of generative thing so that every time you played the game, it would look a little different, which is great from a game design standpoint to make sure that you have replayability as high as you can get it. But it makes absolutely no sense from a factory standpoint. And also there was a kind of a built-in inefficiency about where the machines were placed, again, to make the challenge a little harder for the game, which makes sense from the, running around doing stuff, but doesn't make any sense thematically. So there was always kind of a disconnect between the decisions that the designers were making on what would make more fun gameplay, but then there wasn't a good reason in the story for it to be that way. And so the other big problem was that there was in this company, a centralized narrative group who owned the story Bible and the IP, and they really had a tremendously impressive library of official canon. And so you knew, the order of operations, when things happened in the history of this particular IP. And so there really was no room to innovate around that. There were a lot of kind of preset tones and notes and characters that had to be covered. And I was fine with that. It actually helped create a lot of really good constraint. But the lore Bible had a lot of breadcrumbs that had been laid down, and I seized on many of those because it's a really good IP. I'm like, oh, well, here we could do this, or here we could do that. And what I discovered was in the pod, we're sort of working it as a small group and saying, oh yeah, that's good. That's a good story. But then that story would go up to the narrative folks and they would say, no, we can't do that because we've already committed that breadcrumb to this other project or this other initiative.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so really what should have happened was me as a narrative person should have been the connective tissue between the narrative group who owned the IP and the game designers who were making decisions on how to make the running around super fun. Instead, they left me in the pod. And so every time I came up with a story that the team liked, it wouldn't make it through the narrative filter, either because it wasn't hitting the right tone, or it was using assets that were already repurposed for something else. So that part of it was kind of frustrating, because I really do think that if they had integrated me differently, I could have done the same work and been more productive,
Yeah. So a couple questions. When you're working and when you're developing stuff for someone else, like you said, you were working for a paycheck, and this was like one of those writing gigs that people can get, and maybe some of the folks that listen to us do get. I'm thinking about Jodorowsky's Dune, which never got made. Famously, it's a very good documentary if you want to find it. The folks that were kind of working on Dune, once that went under, those special effects folks and those designers and those creatives went out and did a lot of other stuff. For example, H.R. Geiger was helping him, and H.R. Geiger went on to do Alien. Some of the special effects people went on to do Star Wars. So it kind of like, well, we didn't get to use our ideas here, but we can use them in other places. With you signing a contract, with you having an NDA and things like that, how much of what you wrote is still kind of yours if you wanted to say, you know what, I really like this little kernel of something that I did. Maybe I could turn that into something else for myself?
Honestly, Tim, not much at all. The point of this was to align myself with their intellectual property. And I did
Right.
have to try to innovate a little bit within that framework. Every time I kind of said, well, this is a breadcrumb that I'd like to explore. And they said, no. I'm like, all right, well,
Yeah,
shoot, the
yeah.
only safe route at this point is to create something completely new that is self-contained within the world. It doesn't impact other things. So I did write a series of actually factory supervisors who you would cycle through these different factory supervisors. One of the cool things about the game is that, I mean, the way I wrote it, and they didn't use it, so I don't think there's any problem with me saying it because they have no intention of using it. But the idea that as you witness the sort of downfall of a company, and I've witnessed this from the inside on at least one occasion, that you end up having this kind of spiraling, it's almost like a death spiral of supervisors, and they turn over really quickly. And it's a good indication that your company is on its way down when they rapidly turn over leadership. And so I'm like, well, let me explore that, because I thought it was really cool that the story that we had set up was sort of the last breath of a dying company, and you as a factory worker are experiencing that. And so I'm like, okay, well, you know, the players are running around doing fun stuff in the factory. They can experience the death of the company by seeing the rapid turnover and having to conform to the new requirements of a different boss. So it's almost like the game would change slightly, because under, you know, this one guy, under Reggie, for example, your target is this, but under somebody else, the target changes. Even though the work is the same, the thing you're focusing on is actually a little different. And I thought that was really cool. So that's just, that concept is probably the only thing that I could recover and repurpose for my own work. But I don't know that I would do that. Again, I was just trying to do good work for them. And I'll tell you, the goal, it was hard to get super duper excited about some of this, especially towards the end of the contract, because, you know, you hear no often enough, and it sets up an expectation that no matter what you do, you're going to hear no. So I think if you're working for somebody else and you're getting a lot of no, that should really indicate that you have to approach the work differently. And I think having an open and honest conversation with the employer saying, well, how do we do this differently so that we can have fewer no's? Because I want to give you stuff that you can use. And I didn't ever feel like I had enough stroke or political sway to do that. I really felt like I was, you know, under the tutelage of the people who were giving me work direction. And I just didn't have a lot of authority or control. And so there were whole stretches of time where I was sort of dormant, and then they would have crises that would need to be addressed, and we would do kind of a flurry of work. So that ended up being the back and forth there. But yeah, I mean, it's completely different from when you're doing your own work. But I'll tell you, the one thing I did appreciate about having people to do work for is that there are deadlines. And when I have a deadline, I hit it. So I was very excited to have a reason to kind of get up and do this work, and to be consistent in banging out new fiction, new beats. And I felt really good about that. So that's probably the one thing I've learned that I want to bring to my own work, is that if I'm my own boss, right, as the writer, you know, write my own stuff, if I set myself the time frame and really hold myself to that standard, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do this work. I should be able to write it. And I know that my bar is a lot lower now, just from a first draft standpoint. I used to have an impossibly high standard for the first draft, which would be the thing that would kind of kill momentum to start with. You write 50 words, and go, these words are terrible. Oh, I'm never going to do this. Right. And then the day is over. It's like, no. Just keep writing. You'll eventually get to something good.
Yeah, that's it's funny because that's kind of some of the thoughts that I had myself over the summer with some of the experiences I had. But as far as moving forward, you know, is it something that you would want to do again?
100%.
I mean, it feels like it would be the easy answer would yes. But have you learned anything that might help? Is there anything you would want to negotiate the next time out? Maybe that's too difficult to decision, or too open-ended, I should say, question.
I mean, that's a question of the power dynamic. If you're a contractor, you have very little power, right? The only thing I felt like I brought was a level of expertise that no one else had. And so early on in the project, I felt like I had a larger voice in what was happening, but there was actually leadership turnover on the project. You know, the person who hired me got promoted and moved into a larger project. And so I was then put under someone who had not hired me. And that was the beginning of the end, because I wasn't that person's chosen quarterback, to take this thing and drive down, score a touchdown. No, I was just, they got stuck with me. So you saw me getting utilized less and less, and then ultimately just sort of shown the door. So it all worked out because it was the end of the natural life cycle of the contract anyway. I was hoping that they would like some of the work that we had done and see the potential and extend it. That's really what the goal was to extend it. But once I had that leadership change, I knew it was just a matter of time before they took a knee and let the clock run out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I don't think I would do anything different other than be a little more direct about recommending how we would be more productive and not waste as much time by just making sure that the decision makers are looped in as early as possible. And that's just good project management. Like, you don't want to work at a vacuum and have everybody feel good about something, and the decision maker has no clue. And then you bring it to the decision maker and they don't like it. And so now you've wasted all of that time building things, gaining consensus, and not including the decision maker. So, I've got over a decade of project management experience. I know that, but I didn't feel like I had the political capital to bring that forward because I was, quote, just a contractor and really one of the bit players, on the project. I was just happy to be included in a way. So I feel like if I had been in a project management role, I would have said that day two. Like it would have been really easy to just come forward and say, we need to fix this. It's going to be a problem later. But I just didn't feel like I had the stroke to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something I know that I would carry into a situation like that. I'm happy to have the gig. I'll just say yes to everything. And then traditionally I've been in work environments where I sort of, I'm just so happy to have the gig that when I start to see things kind of go wrong, it's very much like, yeah, but I've got the gig and I don't want to create any waves, when it would have been more helpful, to have had a little bit more of my voice. Now, that's very easy to say when you're not in the situation, but I just know that if I was in your shoes, I would have been so like, sure, whatever. What do you want? Cool. Okay. Sure, guys. Whatever. I'm going to go and do that, and not saying, wait a minute, I'd like to do this, this, and this. And I feel like I've gained more in my life by listening to my own voice and at least bringing it up. You don't have to be a jerk about it. I would like to see things happen like this or that, just so that you feel like you're part of the conversation. And obviously those are ideal people to work for who listen to that.
I didn't want to be that guy who would, come in with 25 years experience in learning and development, but have no rapport, no trust, nothing with this team, and tell them, hey, you're doing this wrong. Like, that's a great way to get iced out. So I felt like it's more important to me to develop a rapport and build trust and demonstrate value early on. And that worked well because the guy running the project was the guy who hired me, and he knew what he wanted out of me, and he made his expectations very clear, and I was delivering on what he wanted. But coming back to how other people can use this experience, to kind of help them in their time. There is a lot of writing work out there that we can go find, and a lot of opportunity to write for other people. So if you have the opportunity to do this, take it. Because even if you think, I don't want to pull focus from my own work, and I really want to stay focused on my own goals, and there's only so much time in the day. I don't want to give it away to other people. Look, giving away your time for money is part of how we do things in capitalism. There's no getting around it. So if you can get the benefit of giving away your time for money in a writing context, do it. And I think it's great for networking. Meet as many people as you can and just do it that way. But I'm hopeful that the discipline that I had in the professional writing context translates into my personal writing, and I think it will.
Yeah. Any new tricks that you picked up for yourself as far as your personal writing from this professional little jaunt?
Yeah, deadlines are really important. I mean, I knew that, but having a definite deadline really helps, but I find that mapping something out in the morning doesn't help me as much. So if I make a to-do list, let's say you need to go to the grocery and you need to buy bread, and then you need to pay this bill, and then you need to complete this report, and then, check these emails. Like, those are all tasks. So you can make lists of tasks and complete that stuff and feel really good about it. But I find that if I put writing as a task on a to-do list, it's a guarantee that it won't happen. So I think blocking time is much more valuable to me cognitively than it is making a list of things to do. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I like to explore in writing, and I just want to have enough room or time to explore, rather than, here's mud that I need to shovel into this a wheelbarrow, and then I need to walk it over here and shovel it out. Like, no, that's not how my writing process works. So yeah, I think that's the one thing I learned, is that I was making task lists, and I stopped after a while because it just wasn't helping. And instead I was just blocking time, and that was really helpful.
Yeah. 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 That's something, that's helped me as well. Learning that just having, I have I've got my to-do lists every day, or, I'm finding more comfort every Sunday, looking forward to the next week and trying to strategize how the week is going to go and what I'm going to give the time to. And, just going write new piece never seems to work. I just need to give myself the space, the time, the block of time to do something that works that way.
Put down B. Hemingway. It never works. I don't know why. I put it on the list.
It's so weird. Anyway, I had a very nice summer where I was learning about time as opposed to to-do lists. And that was something that really helped. A pretty successful summer for me. I'm very, very excited about it. I had the opportunity to go do a show in Michigan. It's a 1965 play called Catch Me If You Can. It has nothing to do with Frank Abagnale, nothing to do with the movie, nothing to do with the musical. This is a different murder mystery, written in 1965. And, in acting, there's an old adage that, going to auditions is the work, and doing the actual play, once you get a gig, that's the vacation. Because now all you have to do is just memorize 2 hours of a play inside your head. So it was very nice to have that sort of comfort level where I had a gig. I've got bills that I'm paying with my paycheck. I'm on stage doing the thing that I really, really like. Rehearsing a show is always difficult because, you're, again, cramming 2 hours of lines into your head. You're trying to remember where your props are. You're trying to remember all this stuff. But once the show opens, you have a lot of time because, the show is memorized. For the most part, there was a couple times where I forgot someone's name, but you have all of this free time. And it was really, really nice to be able to wake up and spend a little bit more time every day working on my writing, as opposed to trying to, work out where the next gig is, or do the hustle, do the kind of thing like that. So, I just, more often than not over this summer, I was waking up, and instead of giving myself that sort of 15 minutes or a half an hour and being like, okay, I got to work on my day. I got to move on to something else. I got to go to a job. I got to go to an audition. I got to go to a thing. There would be this point, and I know it because I know myself very well, where I would say, wow, all right, I'm at a really good place. I should stop now because I have to go to do this other thing. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to do any other things except go to the pool, which was a new thing I also started doing this summer, but we'll get into that at some other point. And I continued to work on the piece that I was working on. And that really, really worked out well. I know this is probably the dumbest thing I could possibly say, but giving myself more time to write really did help me out, because I used to be so, writing all of the microfiction that I did. It's like very easy to sort of like, okay, I got 15 minutes. Let me see what I can do. I've got a half an hour. Let me see what I can do. I'm on a break. Let me see what I can do. And instead, I restructured my schedule so that I gave myself an hour or an hour and a half. And it really, really, really helped kind of solidify a lot of things. One of the other things that I did, we've talked a lot about my hangups. I used to be someone who needed to be in the right coffee shop. The right music had to be playing. The coffee had to be at the right spot on the table. I needed the right pen, because this is back when I was, writing in journals. And I had all of these things between me and just doing the work. Now I just sort of realized from my experiences this summer, it didn't have to be any of that. I shouldn't have been thinking about any of that. It was finding the right mindset. Because, I was always worried about the right time of day or the place, putting all this stuff in front of me. So I just managed to find myself some time where I would carve out 1 hour a day, which is a luxury, just a luxury in the afternoon. So I should just, clarify a little bit. When I was giving myself like an hour and a half, that was in the morning. That's before anybody was even awake. Like it was like 5 a.m. I'm up with my coffee. I'm just sort of kind of working through some new pieces or just trying to restructure other things. But then I found later in the afternoon was a good time for me where my mindset was like, I'm not ready for dinner yet. I've had lunch. I've done all of my to-do list items for the day. I was staying for this play that I was in. I was in Michigan, and the hotel that I was staying in had this nice little dining area in the lobby, and I would just take something down there, just get a new fresh cup of coffee and just sort of bang something out. And it was the distance I had from the piece. So I would just pull something out and just be like, let's see what I've got today. And this might have happened like maybe once or twice a week where I was in this mindset of like, I'm ready to get at something. So that actually yielded 3 different pieces that were published or are about to be published. It was really, really great. I think it was a very big revelation for me to realize it's not the place, it's not the sun, the angle of the sun, it's not the music, it's just the mindset that I have to find myself in to do some writing that I feel is good and that has been accepted. Now, there's a lot of other things around that. There's a lot of stuff, It's a very oversimplified way of putting it, but it was a really good summer.
Yeah, I like what you're talking about because it feels like almost a mental setting rather than a physical setting of place is what's really driving your productivity as a writer. Whereas 20 years ago, you had the trappings of the right pen, the right coffee shop, the right music, etc., all external things. Now it's really more that internal setting of your mind, having that calm and that peace and just have that time set aside to do the work. And then you find that it flows more easily. Did I get it? Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think when I was younger, I was very, very, you see sometimes through social media or, whatever we had before social media, you'll see something like, oh, this is Ben Franklin's schedule for his day, or this is how this writer works. They get up and they write until noon. And it's like, I think I used to really wish that I had those kinds of schedules, but I don't. I gotta pay rent. I don't have that luxury. I didn't have that luxury of like being a writer who could just sit down for hours at a time. And so I think that really, really stressed me out. And so I'm like, finally, after way too long, I'm just starting to realize I just need to focus on myself and forget that stuff. And it's been very, very successful. I just also want to say that I also am frustrated by it because I think the goal is to have like a formula. Tim's personal formula for doing work and getting it published. And that's never going to happen. It's so subjective, to have something that's going to get published. I think what I'm trying to go for now is just feeling that the piece is right in the way that I like it. And we've talked about that all the time. We've talked about it for 5 previous chapters. Yes. But yeah, it was nice to kind of start playing with other ways of doing things this summer and finding them successful.
Yeah. You're describing, exactly what we have been talking about for a long time, but it's around process, making sure that you've got something sustainable that you can, instead of it being a formula where it's like input A and B and outcomes glorified story. Yay. Done. I'll repeat with new variables and get new stories. Yay. That kind of formula is going to provide you with the exact same story over and over again. But the process of how you approach the work, what excites you, and then how you draft and redraft, how you revise, how you include other people in your editing loop, that process can be iterated over and over again, and you get wildly different results. And that's great. And you're publishing, it's showing, the world is telling you that you're doing it the right way, which is very, very cool.
Part of me also realizes, I've gotten my 4th skull from Had. And so I've gotten 4 this year after so much struggle. I've talked about it here. I've been a little bit too crazy about Had, but for this 4th skull, I just wanted to share. I put my bio. I put Tim is hitting 142, 4 for 28 with 3 withdrawals for Had, and because I just kind of wanted to share the fact that, like, yeah, man, this isn't the norm for me. Is to be rejected by Had. And the norm is to be rejected by a lot of places. But I think I've finally started coming to the place where, as well as my trying to not worry about how other people did it, other people's schedules, how if, I don't know, if Anne Rice wrote somewhere that she had to write from 8:15 to 9:15 every morning, being like, well, I got to be like Anne Rice and do that. No. I'm trying to find my own self in the process, and finding my own voice through that has been very, very helpful. But there's also the factor that, yes, I have had a successful summer. The last 2 months have been very, very good to me. But, there are highs and lows. There are streaks. I'm on a hitting streak, I guess.
Yeah. I think the rejection, you are very comfortable with that. It always stings a little bit. It's never fun. You'd rather get an acceptance, but it doesn't cut the same way it used to, especially 30 years ago. It's not, a negation of your net worth as a creative entity. Like it doesn't do that. It's just, hey, this doesn't fit our publication today. Try again, and you're like, cool, I'll try again. Yeah. So I think you've got the right attitude. What I'm going to bring to the table this coming chapter, is really a kind of a laissez-faire approach to prose. And I know I've talked about this, to death in the previous seasons, but my goal is to just be looser and freer and just allow myself to be, quicker on the draw when it comes to writing, because I feel like I was putting too many constraints on the work and putting too many obstacles in front of myself and really preventing myself from even finding story, because I was so concerned about how each little sentence sounded. And I wouldn't want to show it to anybody unless it, sounded a certain way. So as long as I can kind of throw that hang up away, then I'm good. And also I'd like to bring back some of the folks that we talked to in previous seasons who are friends of the show, and have them come sit with us in the corner booth and talk about some of these experiences that they're having as well. The more good voices we get around the table, the better the conversation.
Yes. And the less I speak, which is good.
No.
Why say things in one sentence when I could say them in 10?
Well, it can be fun. It's so funny too, because your prose is laser focused on being as short as humanly possible. So that's the dichotomy of Tim.
Maybe we need to interview a psychiatrist so we could find out how that. I never thought about that correlation.
That's
never thought about that.
Gentle listeners out in the world, when Tim and I are not recording, we are kind of sharing recommendations for work to read. I'll send him articles on craft, and he'll send me new authors to read. And there was one that you sent, I don't remember the name, and I kind of don't want to look it up, but you sent me someone either yesterday or today. And I read one of their stories and I said, why is this so long? And it listed itself only as a 4-minute read, and it wasn't very long, but the way they had written it wasn't the way that you, Tim, would have written it. And I wanted it to be in your voice. So I'm reading this thing going, why are they circling back to this? Why aren't they pushing into something new and weird? Oh, right. This isn't Tim. This isn't Tim. Okay. And at the end of it, I'm like, all right, well, that was okay, but I really wish it would have been written by Tim. That would have been so much cooler. So I want to encourage you to keep doing it because I enjoy reading your work. And gentle listener out in the world, if you find cool stuff that you think we would like, send it to us. I would love to get links. You can send it to tiffinandwritingworkshop@gmail.com. I'm always on the lookout for new work to read, so share it with us. We're always looking for ways to collaborate as well. And I remember once we tried to write a story together. Actually, it was actually a novel. We tried to write one together. I think we lasted like an hour and then we said, hey, let's just try different stuff, and it's not because we don't get along. We obviously get along, but like creatively, I think collaboration is really difficult. And that's one of the reasons when we talked with Kat Hammonds, it was really compelling to me because she does significant collaboration on screenwriting with a partner. But I think the goal for me is really just to have stuff to show you, and as long as I can be producing something new, even if it's not great, it's new. I want to be showing you new stuff. So for me, this chapter, this season, my goal is to just have new stuff to show you. And I'm thinking really honestly, once a week is the target. Like, as far as I kind of keep pushing things out. Well, I might be busy this week. So let's say every 2 weeks. And then that becomes revised to, well, every 2 weeks is tough because of work. So like once a month. And then all of a sudden you've started creating this institutional reason not to do the thing you said you wanted to do, which is terrible, right? Who are you fooling? Yeah. So I think weekly, like we should just pick a day, whether it's Friday or Monday or Wednesday or whatever, but pick a day and go, whatever I have, whether it's 5 words or 5,000 words, you're going to get it on that particular day. And I think that kind of work sharing would really help me, 1, stick to a schedule, 2, budget the time so that I can have something new to give you, and 3, not hold me down to a particular word count. When we used to do NaNoWriMo, that's the thing that would kill me. As soon as I missed my word count, 1 day, project was over. Because I'm like, oh, well, now I have to do even more. I can't catch up and forget it. I'm not going to do it. So like, I don't want to create a scaffolding that can crumble and fall on my head. I just want a framework that I can work within. So I think that's what we should do.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. One of the other things that I learned about this summer, we have for a while talked about trying to do longer pieces for myself, trying to get something bigger out there. And I still have yet to reread the novel that I wrote for NaNoWriMo, but I've been trying to collect pieces to put into a chapbook to get out there and hopefully have as something that I can, physical presence and say, look, I have a book. There's a collection of stuff, and I can give it to Mom and she can be proud that I actually did something. But one of the things that was happening was a severe case of FOMO. Being on social media and having built such a community of folks from the Smoke Long workshops I did earlier this year, seeing folks who were like, oh man, I just got something into this publication. I just had a story published here, and reading those stories. Our old friend Emily Rinkema has been doing incredible work. Bethany Jarmel has been doing incredible work. So many authors that I've made friends with and acquaintances with over the past year and through the Tiffin. It was such a great way to inspire me to write, was reading other people's writing. And that's like, that's another one of those things that's just like so basic, but sometimes I forget. It was Bill Watterson of Calvin and Hobbes who said the best way to generate ideas is to go out and learn something new. And so, not only was it very inspiring to see other people getting their work published with whom I had, cultivated these relationships, but it was like, yeah, but I want to be published too. I want to be published. And that was also part of it that helped me really push into areas that I hadn't normally pushed, by writing more, by not being satisfied by one sentence I wrote for the day, but saying, no, I'm not going to stop right now. I'm going to see where else I can take this. So having that community is very, very helpful to keep you moving along and inspired.
Yeah. No, that sounds fantastic. Well, I think that's what we're going to try to do is share work, build our community, and welcome our listeners in to the corner booth. So I'm looking forward to chapter 6 of the show, and we'll get started next week with another glorious discussion.